this. It's so easy to knock it off. I want to talk about the pros and cons of Donald Trump. This has been a bit of a challenge for me. I had to think about this. But one of the pros of Donald Trump is, well, he's been a president before. He has many, many years of business experience. And he also is very skilled at getting what he wants. He knows how to tell people what they want to hear so that they want to support him. It's a form of manipulation, and he's very good at it, I have to admit. And that's all the pros that I could come up with, to be quite frank. I'm sure there must be more. I just can't. Maybe it's just that I just can't think of any off the top of my head, or I just don't know enough about him. Here we come to the cons. I'm sorry it was so abrupt, but I'm sorry. If you think of other pros about Trump, yeah. So he is part of the Republican Party, which has taken over much of Congress and has taken over most of the Supreme Court and many of the other courts. There are hundreds of Republican judges that have been that were appointed by him to various courts, and that's, judges are not supposed to be partisan. They are supposed to be neutral. Their job is to enforce the law, not interpret the law according to their political and ideological beliefs. But when you're appointed based on your political agenda, that's like a nod to you to say, yes, you can abuse your position as judge. Now, I'm not saying that all of those judges are like that, but some of them are, like Judge Cannon. Aileen Cannon shouldn't be a judge at all. And then there's Chief Justice Roberts and Thomas and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Alito. None of them should be justices either. They have all broken their oath as defenders of the Constitution. Anyways, I digress. So let's talk about the cons. Donald demonstrates that he has various neurotic and psychological issues. I've seen him be petulant. I've seen him have senior moments like Biden does. And I have seen him display indications of narcissism, possibly psychopathy, and several other things. And it's very disturbing to me. I've noticed that his campaign is based primarily on negatives and telling a certain group of people, which happen to be the Republicans in general, what they want to hear, because they want somebody who's going to do what they feel is important. And that's what he did last time. And that includes the elites. Donald is backed by some very wealthy people, including Robert Mercer, who is an ultra-conservative billionaire. He made his money in the early years of AI, and he jumped in to Trump's campaign and funded it and gave him Bannon and gave him the support of Breitbart, which is a false news agency, and then Bannon had a video company, something Steel, I forget what it's called, and all of these resources were pushed into Donald, and he got the help of Bannon and other professionals. And when I say ultra-conservative, I mean this guy, Mr. Mercer, is very, very much on the far right end, and he's not afraid of fascism. He also has very specific religious beliefs that are not encompassing for the majority of people, including Christians. And Trump himself doesn't seem to care about religion. He just uses it as a tool. He uses things like abortion as a tool as well. He doesn't personally care. He's flip-flopped on abortion and IVF. And whenever he tries to go pro-choice, a large portion of his base says, no, you can't do that. And then there's the problem with the Republican Party in general. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, certain segments of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party and the Republican Party used to look very, very different than they do today. There were conservative economic experts in the Democratic Party. There were liberal whatevers in the Republican Party. It was a very different ballgame back in those days. But when Nixon happened and certain other things happened, like the social revolution that occurred in the U.S. in the 60s and 70s, there was a certain subset of people, especially from the South, who formed and some of them formed the Dixiecrats, which was a temporary political party that didn't win, but they decided to migrate to the Republicans, and this included a lot of people who are racist. And the evangelicals and Oral Roberts and Billy Graham and all those others are spinning in their graves because of what has happened to their evangelical movement that they helped to turn into the moral majority back when I was a kid. They're spinning in their graves. Why? Because they see what the evangelical movement has turned into. It's been co-opted by Opus Dei. I think that's the right word, Opus Deus, or maybe, which is I guess you could say, a divergence of Catholicism. And they have been at war with the actual Catholic Church for a long time. And sometimes they've gained control as the Pope, but most of the time they're very much oriented toward certain things, and such as fascism and dictatorships, and very much unsavory in certain ways. So this organization, which has been around for like 2,000 years, has infiltrated the evangelical movement. Whereas when I was younger, it was only like the Catholics and certain other groups that were anti-abortion and anti-contraception. But now a large percentage of evangelicals are not just anti-abortion, but they're also anti-IVF and anti-contraception and anybody who's not white and anti-democracy. And this is because of the actions of Opus Dei to take over that movement, to co-opt it for their own purposes, because they're a smaller group. And evangelicals represent about a third of the American population. So, in the Republican Party, we've got the racists, we've got these fringe lunatic evangelicals who are militant, which is against the teachings of Christ, who are fascist, which is against the teachings of Christ, who want to take away even IVF. I know people who have children only because of IVF. They want to roll back the clock to the 1950s at best. They want Jim Crow. They want anybody not white to be a second-class citizen, including women, even white women. will be second-class citizens again. They want to get rid of as many people as they can who are not white because they feel threatened that they have to share space with other human beings who don't look exactly like them. And yes, there are black Republicans and Latino Republicans and Asian Republicans, and I guess they just don't realize what they're getting themselves into, or they're hoping for a piece of the pie, and they're willing to sell out their brethren to do that. I don't know. I could be speculating. They could just be naive. But getting back to Trump. Trump is being supported by a group of people that when he said, I want to be dictator for a day, they were like, yeah, that's what America needs. I don't mind if Trump's a dictator. It takes just one day for a dictator to be, for a day, to become dictator for life. Because in that one day, you can get rid of all the laws that prevent you from being dictator for life. Look at Hitler. Look at Mussolini. Look at Stalin. Look at Mao. Look at Xi Jinping. Well, Hitler and Mussolini ended up losing, but, that wasn't their choice. So we have a man who is disrespectful toward women and says coarse things about his own daughter. Now, I think, honestly, he loves Ivanka, and when he says something like that, he's just socially awkward, but a lot of people find it very, very offensive, and I understand why. Some people find it creepy that he would say, oh, if she weren't my daughter, I would date her, which is another way of saying if she weren't my daughter, I'd fuck her. And let's be honest, Ivanka is very attractive. But it is kind of creepy to talk in that manner about your own daughter. Trump says a lot of inappropriate things. But, and I have had experience with con artists and pathological liars. And I have noticed mannerisms in him that indicate that he is a liar. And fact checkers have confirmed that his rate of lying is 50 to 75%. So, at best, he's half right, and the rest of the time he's just full of crap. And that's a big problem, because we have enough liars in Washington, D.C. already without adding a known liar as the president. There's so much more that I could say on this. He claims not to know anything about Project 2025 and the people who made it. And yet, there is footage of him giving a speech at the Heritage Foundation, the makers of Project 2025. There is footage of him saying all kinds of things, like, when I win, in 4 years, you're not going to have to worry about voting again. Not have to worry about voting again. In other words, he'll take control forever. And then he's got J.D. Vance, who is a man who's so power hungry that he will sell his soul and say whatever Trump wants him to say, even denying the fact that Trump lost the last election. And then Trump wants to pardon all of the people who committed the insurrection. That is very concerning. I mean, first he condemned them, and then he praised them, and now he wants to pardon them. Also, he has admitted publicly in rallies that he's going to go after all of his opponents. That is something a dictator does. So that is something a fascist does. He is supported by people who are nationalists, and also people who are theocrats. Now, best case scenario is America gets pushed more in the direction of Christianity, which some would argue is a good thing. Worst case scenario is America is no longer a democracy. It is a theocracy. And the only accepted religion is Christianity, and only certain types of Christianity. Mainstream Christians would have to convert. Anybody else would have to convert. Now, would they take it as far as Hitler did? I don't know. Would they take it as far as Mussolini did? I don't know. And I certainly hope that Donald will not use Project 2025 or the other one that's out there that's not famous. But the fact of the matter is he's erratic, he's unpredictable, he's selfish, he doesn't like to pay attention when people aren't talking about him. He's not competent. He has bankrupted casinos. How do you bankrupt a casino, let alone multiple casinos? That is a very, very disturbing sign. He has ties to Russia because he owns property there, and Russians have invested in some of his property here to keep it from going under. So, since the government of Russia is run by former KGB and GRU operatives like Putin, and those who are not in government are in the mafia of Russia, that suggests that he could not just have ties to the government of Russia, but also the Russian mafia. And then there's the way he talks so nicely about dictators like Erdogan or whatever his name is, and Putin and Kim and Xi, for example. And then there are the allegations that he took $10 million, put it into his campaign, but that he got that $10 million from Egypt as a bribe so that the embargoes against Egypt would be lifted. And they were. And because of that supposed $10 million, Egypt, Erdogan, got over $1 billion of U.S. money for military aid. But let's stop talking about all this, and let's go back and look at his platform. I'm on his webpage, donaldjtrump.com/platform. And I like the way he has laid out this kind of an overview. And there's a link you can go to for more detail. But I've noticed there is some repetition. Like I noticed 3 times at least. I think it's 4 times actually. There's mention of immigration stuff. And there's some other stuff that's repeated as well. And some things are a little bit too vague. But overall, this is a lot easier to get useful information from than Kamala Harris's chapter titles. So I'm going to read them to you. Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. So first of all, it is absolutely impossible to seal the border because if you build a wall, they will tunnel under it, and they already have. Second of all, they can go around the border in the water. Third of all, they can fly over the border. There is literally no possible way to seal the border. Make the wall go down 20 feet? They'll just go down 30 feet or 25. It is impossible. The migrant invasion is because primarily regular Latin American people are trying to escape the cartels. Why are the cartels so powerful? Well, number one is because there are so many drug users in America that are funding all the drug lords in Central and South America. It's our fault that all those people are trying to escape to our country. It's not an invasion. They're fleeing. I've met some of them. They've told me stories. They're horrible. And then some of them try to come across the border, and Americans illegally murder them because Trump. Anyways, number 2, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Our country is built almost entirely on immigrants. I can't really count the Native Americans because we destroyed most of them and imprisoned the rest, and most of them are still marginalized by our government and our citizenry. So the vast majority of America is what it is today because of immigrants, and it always has been that way. Always has been that way. And yet we have wave after wave of anti-immigrant sentiment, especially when Trump drums up false stories about Haitians eating animals, even though it's been disproven, and Haitians stealing jobs and increasing costs of living in Springfield, even though that's been disproven and directly refuted by the mayor of Springfield and the governor of Ohio, not to mention the city council and the police and so on in Springfield. And I've heard from people who are from Springfield or know people from Springfield that this is not true, that Vance and Trump are lying. And yet they carry on with that. And so many other lies. So I have a real serious problem because they're talking about not just deporting illegals, and there are a lot of illegals. They're also going to implement plans of action that will target legal aliens. Now, when I say aliens, I don't mean from out in outer space. Aliens is the immigration term for people from another country. Okay, better. They don't say immigrant necessarily; they say aliens. I find that offensive. I think immigrant is much better. So they're going to be targeting so it's going to become this thing where, oh, you don't talk like you're from America. Well, I'm not from this part of America. I'm from over there. Yeah, but you sound weird. Well, that's because I talk like we talk over there. Yeah, well, you look like you're probably not from America, so we're deporting you. Or they look at you and they see you have a nose that's too big or too small. You have hair that's the wrong color or the wrong curliness or whatever. Your skin color is wrong and your eye color is wrong. Blammo, you could end up being deported to another country, even though you're a full-blooded American, or you're a legal immigrant, including the people that were brought in on immigration programs, like the Haitians, like the Dreamers. Number 3, end inflation and make America affordable again. Inflation went up during Trump, so how is he going to make it go down? Now, granted, it's not all his fault. A large portion of the inflationary problems that we have been experiencing are, number 1, because of COVID-19 and all the shutdowns and the stimulus checks, of which he gave the first one. And number 2 are because of the way our system is set up. It encourages inflation. So how is he going to make America affordable again? He didn't do that in his last 4 years, so I'm a little bit skeptical. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. That would require huge quantities of either nuclear, which is a good idea, or coal, oil, and gas, which is a terrible idea. Now, if we're going to go with renewable energy, biomass is a horrible idea. Absolutely horrible, because it's basically the same thing as burning coal, oil, and gas. They tear down forests and burn them to make energy. Does that sound bright? No, it sounds stupid. And yet, that is what's happening. And because those biomass power plants cannot produce enough power and have to be given a source of power to start up, they also simultaneously burn coal, gas, and oil. Yeah, so I'm really curious how he plans to actually make us the world's largest energy producer when renewable green energy sources like solar and wind are not exactly environmentally friendly, but because they use a lot of those fossil fuel sources and bio sources in order to make those products and destroy the earth to dig up all those resources. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. So I'm assuming that when he says stop outsourcing, he is not referring to the epidemic of outsourcing that has been the bane of our lives for decades now, where you work for a third-party company that contracts with the people you want to work for, and they take a big cut of the money and then give you what's left. I'm assuming he's talking about offshoring our manufacturing. And that has been wholeheartedly supported for most, if not all of my life, by Democrats and Republicans alike. So I would really love to know how he's going to convince companies like Apple, for example, to move back to the United States when they are heavily invested in China and have put even more of an investment into China. I don't think it's going to happen. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Okay, I already did a video about the tax thing. I have a question. Are they going to raise the cost, wages for wait staff so they can actually have a decent minimum wage? And then large tax cuts. What about the tax cuts for the rich that you're going to give again? Are they going to be as much larger than they were last time? Because here's the thing. When you give tax cuts to the rich, you lose a lot of money. And that means the government has to borrow money to pay for things. Who can possibly loan them that money? Yes, you're right. Rich people. So the rich benefit by being taxed less, and then they benefit again because the government comes to them and says, "Please lend us your money." "Oh, of course, but you're going to have to pay this much interest." "Oh, no problem, we'll pay you." And so it's just fueling the disparity between us and the elites. And Trump actually made it worse with his tax cuts for the rich, as have many other presidents. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. I really, really hope this is true, because if number 7 is true, then it is really good news as far as Project 2025 is, because Project 2025 is basically an abnegation of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Number 8, prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, all made in America. Well, prevent World War III, I love the idea of that. Restore peace in Europe, I love that. And in the Middle East, I love that. Here's the problem. While there are many Republicans who want to end our support for Ukraine, if we don't get Putin to stop invading Ukraine, Putin may continue his invasion. Just like, Hitler, when he kept on invading country after country and kept on saying, I'm stopping now. And then he just did some more. That will just pull us into a world war. And the Middle East, how is he going to stop that? Is he going to tell the Israelis to get out of Israel? No, because his base of evangelicals who believe they have an obligation to support the Jews will not allow it, which is why when he was president last time, he had the embassy moved to Jerusalem. I believe it was, because that's what the evangelical fanatics wanted. So, no, he's not going to make the Middle East more stable, because his goals are aligned with the Christians and the Jews and not with the Muslims, as he has amply demonstrated. Build a great iron? I hope he's being euphemistic here, because iron, rust, rain, rust. Yeah. No, Iron Dome sounds stupid. Okay. Number one, we can't build an Iron Dome. It would not survive the weather. Number two, we would not survive the dome because it would block out all the light and all the weather and the air. So yeah, I'm making fun of this idea. But the fact of the matter is he's talking about a defense shield based on missiles. Okay, that is something attainable. Will it shield us from 100% of missiles? Well, based on what happened when Hezbollah, I think it was, shot all those missiles, or was it Iran? I forget. Whoever it was, Iran, I think, sent all those missiles over to Israel. America had to help Israel, even though they already have a missile shield. And still, some of the missiles got through. And in Ukraine, something similar happened. And fortunately, Russian missiles are not terribly accurate, so a lot of the missiles didn't hit their targets. They certainly hit something, though. And all made in America? Probably not. Unless he actually succeeds in bringing manufacturing back to the United States. But because he doesn't care about the environment, our environment will be destroyed in the process. We will go back to a worse situation with pollution than we are already in now, where most of our streams and rivers are polluted, and anybody living near ranches, like especially pig farms, have a high rate of many diseases that are not normally common. And the weaponization of government against the American people. He has been weaponizing the government against the American people. So how is he going to stop what he has been doing? Doesn't work for me. 10, stop the migrant crime epidemic. Oh, here we are back with the migrants. Demolish the foreign drug cartels. Yes, get Americans to stop using drugs. Good luck with that. Crush gang violence. Okay, and lock up violent offenders. That's what we've been doing. Has it made a difference? No. I would like it to happen, but as long as we have a prison system that is privatized and incentivized and doesn't deal with these problems and actually produces hardened criminals who have a hard time reintegrating, who have a hard time finding work that will pay their bills, and many of them will go back into crime because there are few options for them. A lot of employers will not take ex-cons. You can't vote if you're a felon. There's so many barriers. After you get out of prison, after you've paid your debt to society and you get out, there are so many barriers that keep you from becoming an honest citizen, even if you want to, including the police who monitor them after they go out, if they're like on probation or whatever, and parole. So yeah, that's a challenge. And previous attempts to go in that direction with Clinton failed and only made things worse, is what I mean. Number 11, rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. I don't think we need to rebuild our cities. I think we need to improve upon our cities. So I'm going to assume that that is what is meant there. And if we're going to rebuild, make them safe, beautiful, and clean again, we're going to have to reform society. And that is something that Americans are not going to sit still for. 12, strengthen and modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and most powerful in the world. Okay, so that's not a far stretch. Unfortunately, when you let stupid people make stupid decisions, stupid things happen, which is why it took us so long to get out of the countries we invaded in the Middle East in the first place. Oh, we'll be done in a year. Yeah, right. The arrogance of those people. And besides, our country is beholden to the military-industrial complex, so it is highly unlikely that that is going to happen. 13, keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. So what you're saying then is you're going to manipulate the markets. You're going to control the world in order to assure the power of the dollar over every other currency because it's the reserve currency. Okay. So yeah, more empire building. Yeah, got it. 14, fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. I love that. Will Congress be paying back all the money they took out of Social Security and promised to pay back but never did? Will Social Security no longer be taxed? Will Medicare be managed better? These are important things. 15, cancel the electric vehicle mandate and cut costly and burdensome regulations. I think this is a good idea, not because I'm not interested in better technology, but because I believe that electric vehicles are something of a dead end. Number one, because of the rare earth minerals that are required to make them, and the batteries especially. It's very, very destructive to create all those batteries, and the vehicles are actually heavier than a regular vehicle if you make the same kind of vehicle as an EV. And cut costly and burdensome regulations. That's a really vague statement, and the only thing we can do is assume that is related to the environment, maybe, or just to vehicles. Maybe. It's so unclear. But I do think that we can't be forced to go to electrical vehicles. And the main reason is they're so expensive that most people will not be able to afford to migrate to them. I mean, I would like to have a hybrid, but they're so expensive. And replacing the battery, I mean, if I want to replace the battery in my car, I can spend under $100. If I want to replace the batteries in an EV, I'm going to be spending thousands of dollars, which means I won't be able to use that car anymore, most likely, because the average person won't be able to afford that repair, because most people are foolish with their money. 16, cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. Notice it does not mention religion. So critical race theory has been much maligned and misrepresented over and over again. And there are good forms and bad forms of critical race theory as well. So this is something I have a big question mark. Radical gender ideology, I have to ask what that would mean exactly. Is he talking about any acknowledgement of people that are in between male and female? Because if that's the case, then he's being radical, because this is a medical and biological fact. Scientists and doctors know this to be true. It's not in their heads. It's real. And what is this other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content? Are we now censoring books, which is against the Constitution? 17, keep men out of women's sports. I think what they're referring to is transgender men going into women's sports. And I have already done a video on that topic and come up with some suggestions on how to fairly address that matter. 18, deport pro-Hamas radicals. Why only pro-Hamas radicals? What about pro-Jewish radicals? What about pro-Christian radicals? What about pro-Buddhist radicals? What about other Muslim radicals? What about Hezbollah? What about Al-Qaeda? What about ISIS? Why is it only pro-Hamas? And make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Now, this concerns me because he's tying together this anti-Muslim sentiment with campus safety when that's not actually what's going on. And then he's talking about this patriotism thing. Patriotism to me is a very dangerous thing because there are two kinds of patriotism. There is the real kind of patriotism where you do things based on the Constitution, at the very least. You respect other people's rights. You respect that you don't necessarily agree with them, but they have the right to things that they believe are good, even if you don't agree with that. And then there is blind patriotism. And that's very narrow and very dangerous and very destructive. It's like blind faith. 19, secure our elections, including same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. Okay, so proof of citizenship is a slippery slope because it's a dog whistle argument that is often used by racists to cover up their attempts to disenfranchise people of color, as is voter identification. The whole paper ballot thing, he has previously been in support of paper ballots, and he was unable to come up with any real proof of paper ballot fraud on a large enough scale anywhere in the United States, or even the entire United States, that would have demonstrated he lost the election because of paper ballot fraud. And then what does he mean about the same day voting? I mean, what's his plan there? I would like to know because from what I've heard so far, he's just trying to disenfranchise people. And hey, I had signed up to vote when I got my last driver's license, which was last year. And when I checked, I wasn't on the registry, so I had to re-register. So I don't know if I got purged. I know that in other states, Republicans reputedly have been purging people off the ballots. Not the ballots, off the registry. And doing things in a very unsavory way. Even going after people claiming all kinds of nonsense. And finally, 20, unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success. Okay, new and record levels of success is not going to unite the country. The rhetoric that Trump has spread ever since he moved into the political arena has not united our country. It has divided our country more and more deeply, along with all of the vile crap spilled by Cruz and DeSantis and all these other morons. So you cannot expect that record levels of success that primarily benefit the people who already are very, very rich and powerful are going to unite our country. It is not a realistic plan. It is not going to work because the rich keep on taking more because they're mentally ill and think they have to have more and more and more and more, and they're never satisfied. So I see a lot of problems here. And then, of course, Goldman Sachs says if Trump wins, the economy is going to be worse than with Harris. And if Trump, according to Moody's, if Trump wins, not only that, but we'll lose more jobs and the deficit will go up, which is what happened last time he was president. Yeah. So I'm very, very concerned. And I think that voting for Trump is a big mistake for those reasons and many, many other reasons. I will not be voting for Trump. And I know that people feel very strongly about that. And I implore you to set aside your emotions and look carefully at the facts. You don't have to listen to the rabble-rousing Democrats. You don't have to listen to the rabble-rousing Republicans. Just look at actual facts and stop this alternate facts stuff and this mythology that Trump has created that he's being persecuted by everybody, because that's not true. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Hi. Thank you for watching my video. And I hate doing this, but things have gotten pretty sketchy with my employer. And without going into all the details, which I have covered at other times, at least in part, I need some financial assistance. If you have the opportunity to do so, that's great. If you don't, even if you can just put in a word of support in the comments, that helps. To have even just that is good. But financially, I need to be able to carry on doing what I'm doing with these channels. Not so much this channel, not so much the Eclectician channel, which is mostly just me learning about stuff and sharing it with you, but with my Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, where most of what you see that I review, I've purchased myself, or I've gotten at a food pantry, or somebody gave to me because they know I do reviews. But I have invested huge amounts of money in it. And at this point, with a little over 1,800 viewers, I'm earning maybe $125 a month, which doesn't cover the cost of what I've done, let alone the ongoing cost. And then even worse than that is my third channel that's at the PC Expert Amateur, which I've invested a large sum of money that I should have been saving for my retirement, because I wanted to be able to present a lot of information about fans and air coolers and water coolers for computers and other things as well. And in order to do that, I had two choices. I either had to make deals with manufacturers and sell my soul, or stick to my ethics and pay for things myself in order to not be beholden to somebody and not feel like, oh, I owe them. So yeah, it's pretty costly. And with the situation with my employer, Amazon, in which the workers' compensation company Sedgwick refuses to fix my shoulder, which was injured at work over a period of months last year because Amazon's management refused to abide by their own policies to provide me support. I may end up having to pay for the surgery myself with the help of my insurance, and that will still be very expensive. And then I would be out of work for at least a month. So switching to another job, it would be hard, because if I come to you and I say, hey, I want to work for you, and you're like really interested in me, and then I say, oh, by the way, in the near future, I'm going to be having a shoulder replacement, so I will probably be out of work for a month. You're probably going to say, I'll pass, thanks, though. Which would actually be illegal, and you won't tell me that's why you're not choosing me. But, it is a problem, especially with me being as old as I am. I'm almost 58. So if you could please, if you can either go to the my YouTube channel, Glenn's Fast Reviews, and you can make any kind of a donation on there, any size, any time you want, through that, because that's my monetized channel. Or you can go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Glenn MII. That's GLENNMII. And you can make a recurring donation. The smallest one I have on there right now is $10. If that's too big for you to give on a monthly basis, let me know. I can always add a smaller one than that. I just need to know. But again, if you are financially strapped, please don't send me money. I don't want somebody else getting into trouble financially just to help me. That would weigh very heavily on my conscience. So thanks again for watching this video, and let's make the world a better place.